我还记得我第一个看的中文剧叫《别打扰我的学习》。别打扰我的学习是关于一个老板，公司的老板，这个老板然后睡觉了，然后被传送到他高中的时候，因为他是一个高中，再是一个高中生，他必须再学习一下什么叫高考。高考在中国里是中国最重要的考试，也是世界上可能最难的考试之一。因为如果你通过这个考试还是做得好，你可以上一个很大还有很棒的大学。所以这样，我是第一次看到的是，我可能不会理解很多的。我看这个剧的时候，我真的听不懂这些人在说什么。一般的时候，我可以慢慢理解一些，因为那些角色在做这些动作，我可以他们就是这个意思。但另外一半就是他们在说什么因为这个你会觉得因为这样你会很治理自己，你会自我攻击为什么你听不懂？为什么我听不懂？听不懂他们在说什么？但很奇怪的是，我真的不在乎他们听不懂还是听得懂听不懂这些东西，我只是还是很乐意的看，就是这个剧很棒。然后因为这样，这是概念叫 tolerating ambiguity。那 tolerating ambiguity 是什么？ tolerating ambiguity 是简单来说，如果你不理解什么东西，你听不懂什么，比如说你读一个书，然后你发现一个字，我听不懂这个字，我读不懂这个字，还是我念不到，那你不会治理自己，你只是我听不懂它，我看不懂它，我什么不会念它，然后就继续吧，你不会在乎。那this is pretty much a little bit of an explanation of the story I had about first time I immersed in a Chinese drama. And because of this, I've been immersing already for 2 years with immersion learning. And during these 2 years of immersion learning, of course, tolerating ambiguity is a very important part of it because you have to be okay with not understanding things that are important. And of course, why should you listen to me? Well, even though my Mandarin isn't perfect at all, because I was able to tolerate ambiguity, it has taken me a very far way. And because of this, I'm now able to speak a lot better to a point even me 2 years ago could not imagine me doing and having the confidence to do so. And tolerating ambiguity, of course, is a very big part of it. Now, of course, tolerating ambiguity is a very important mindset, but how exactly does it work? Because when you are able to, let's say, watch something and you don't understand it, how are you able to study it, or how are you able to gain something out of it? Because kind of think of it like this, because even though you don't understand something fully, there are still ways in order to try to grasp meaning out of a TV show, especially if it has visual media. For example, let's say you're in an airplane right now. So you're in an airplane and then you're, let's say, watching a movie and then you glance on the other side. And of course, there are other people watching their movies. And then you kind of like get interested in this one movie. Even though you can't, let's say, see the subtitles of it, you're still sort of intrigued. You're still sort of a little bit interested and you're like, what are they watching? And then they, turn back to you. It's like, like that. So this is the thing about it, which is that even though you don't understand, you can still understand in different ways. And one way about tolerating ambiguity is that you have to be okay with not trying to understand every single little thing. Because if we were to tolerate ambiguity right now, then it's going to be a lot faster for us to in order to progress. Because if we were to just try to be obsessed with every single little thing in every single piece of media all the time, what's going to happen is that we're going to get a lot more exhausted, especially let's say when we're reading something or we're going to be going to a lot harder piece of media. It's going to be a lot harder for us to enjoy the content itself and even just simply enjoy the process, especially if we're going to be doing it all the time, which then can lead to then just burnout or boredom, where you just get so discouraged or you just give up after just being so exhausted after just studying Chinese, and you're just thinking to yourself, why is studying Chinese just like this? Is it just always going to be just me with my pop-up dictionary, Yomi Tan, and just simply trying to check all the time, every single time? Because A lot of people, even though interactive immersion and intensive immersion are crucial parts of learning Mandarin and any other language, many people tend to sometimes overlook the power of free flow, which is simply just sitting down there and just trying to just consume the content for what it is. Because, well, it's not all the time that we'll be able to just understand everything. Even in our native language, there are going to be pieces of media that will be a lot harder for us to understand. And because of that, it's going to be something that we could just do. Because when we learned our native languages, we were masters of tolerating ambiguity, just not being so obsessed about things we don't understand. Of course, I'm not asking you to learn like a baby since we are adults, and we have much better ways in order for us to understand a lot faster, a lot of things like say Anki, other resources, instead of just trying to start from square zero and just try to listen to gibberish all the time. Another idea I also want to introduce to you as well about how you shouldn't be obsessed without looking every single word up, especially when the time doesn't come to be, is simply words are not rare Pokemon. And what am I saying about this? Because words are not rare Pokemon. What I'm trying to say is that rare Pokemon, when you see a rare Pokemon, you have to catch it. You have to get it for your collection. However, it doesn't apply the same logic with words, because words in a language are things that are very, very common to come across. Just because, let's say, you find this word in one context doesn't mean you always have to mine it. It doesn't mean you'll always have to put it in your Anki deck. It just means that if you, let's say, skip over the word and you're just okay with that, then it's not going to be very rare that you're going to come across this word another time or another time again. And if you don't ever come across the word again, then maybe it wasn't that important in the first place to learn. When you want to understand native media, it's not going to be as simple as just trying to do a bunch of lookups and be able to just understand it like that. Because when you're going to get into native media for the first time, it is going to be very, very hard to do so. Even something as simple as children's shows, you're not going to be able to just understand them quickly like that. It is going to be a process that will take some time, and eventually, just like me and many other immersion learners, you will be able to understand it. So you just have to hang on tight right there, because of course, like many wise people say, is that in order to get good at something, you first need to suck at it. This comes just right into play with language learning and trying to understand native pieces of media. Second thing is, of course, like, oh, but isn't this idea a bad thing, especially when you get into, let's say, a more intermediate stage? You have to start, let's say, consuming content that's a lot more higher with your level. But paradoxically, this actually makes sense as well, because if you are much better able to tolerate ambiguity, then you will be a lot better naturally with trying to be able to get into harder pieces of content. I mean, think of it. If you're someone that hates ambiguity and just hates not understanding it, let's say, every single little bit of thing, then if we were to just tolerate ambiguity, there are definitely some times, I'll agree with it, where some people take this to way too much of a high level. But most of the time, if you are better able to tolerate ambiguity, you are much more likely to be able to challenge yourself and push yourself forward into the unknown, because you know that you will not be able to understand anything. And the times when you do not understand things, you won't try to beat yourself up for it. You won't try to just tell yourself, oh, I'm such a bad learner in Chinese because I wasn't able to understand this piece of content, and I thought I was already at, let's say, I thought I was at B2 level, and I can't understand this. This is such a disgrace to me. You wouldn't try to give yourself that sort of mindset, but instead you'd be like, okay, I don't understand this. This is actually a much better way and a much better learning opportunity for me, because, well, again, I just want to say it again, is that learning Chinese is going to take a long time to do, and there will be many times that you're not going to be able to understand everything 100%. This is just a fact, and I've just explained this already second time. And if we were to just tolerate ambiguity more, and we wouldn't just be so obsessed over every single little detail, then we'd be a lot better and we'd be a lot more fast in order to progress in the language. Even though it doesn't seem like that right now, because I completely understand. I still remember the days where I was trying to immerse in content and I just had no idea what they were saying. And now when I come back to it in my level, I look at those pieces of content, I'm just like, bro, those were so easy. But during the time when I was still struggling with it, those were pieces of really hard content. And you shouldn't be disgraced of yourself just because you can't understand it, because you will be able to understand it given the time that you put into it, as long as you don't give up. But how are you able to do this as well a bit more practically? Because we still want to be able to do intensive and interactive immersion where we do look up lots of words and, get the benefit of just discovering new things, but also have some time for free flow and just relaxing and not really giving yourself the pressure of just trying to understand everything or try to make an effort to do too many lookups. Well, simply put it is that just block a time where you do interactive immersion and free flow immersion, because interactive and intensive immersion, while useful, it does take up a lot of energy, and hence the reason why tolerating ambiguity can be such an important tool, because, well, it helps you go a lot faster and doesn't get you stuck on, let's say, trying to learn this one sentence and then move on to learn this one sentence. Instead, you just get what you can with this one, get what you can with that one, just get the pieces of low-hanging fruit that are available for you, and then eventually you'll be able to do it. But still, this is my biggest recommendation, which is that if you want to also be able to look up words, also be able to pull out definitions, then schedule a block of time where you do intensive immersion, and then schedule the rest of your time where you just free flow and just have fun and try not to do too many lookups. And if you're still a beginner, I also recommend as well that try to also limit the amount of lookups you will do, especially if it's more free flow. Even intensive immersion, I'd recommend this at first, where try to limit yourself to only looking things up, let's say maybe let's say every couple scenes, or let's say couple sentences you look something up, and try not to just look up everything every single time. Because another reason why is because if you also just try to learn everything at the same time, in reality, you're not actually going to be learning a lot of things now, are you? Because you're trying to cram so much in your brain, and then once you're off from that immersion session, then you're just going to forget like almost 90% of everything that you've just tried to learn and just cram into your brain. And it's not, and just going to be, well, again, just a big waste of time. So, and that's all I have to say about this video, which is also just one thing I want to give you before I, send you off with, Mandarin immersion, is that simply, well, it's okay to also as well feel anxious and worried when you don't understand something, but it's also very important where you just remember that just like with your native language, you weren't able to understand everything, and learning Mandarin is going to take a long time, and it's not just going to be a snap in the finger, voila, you must suddenly use Mandarin 24/7, or I can suddenly understand all pieces of native content without any problem at all. So, we have World Explored, 我们的旅程刚刚开始, and of course, I have a Mandarin reading course in the description. If Hansa has been giving you lots of trouble and you want to be able to level that up, then I'll be able to teach you without having to do things, let's say studying and writing thousands and thousands of characters. Well, I'll be able to take you after a couple months of learning and trying to be able to get familiar with Hansa, to then being, oh, and make sure as well to also DM me on Instagram in case you have any questions and such. I will reply to those at the time being, not so much with YouTube, but definitely more with Instagram. So